Before we watch this next video, I would like to say that this is a tribute to a dear friend who has passed away, Les Dodd. Les gave me some cracking stories of time slip. He was a great follower of the Ghost Detective series of books. I think he had every single one. We had many discussions over coffee. I really liked him. He was a really decent chap, and he'll be sadly missed. So this is in way, Donna, if you're watching, this is in way of a tribute to a dear friend, Les Dodd. Today we're doing something rather unusual. We're on site. We're talking to Les Dodd. Now, Les has been a friend of mine for a couple of years now, and he has some really interesting stories. Now, I've told you before about ghosts and spirits, but a lot of people have asked me in the past, is there anything, how can you explain time slip? Now, if you haven't heard of a time slip story before, Les has one, and thank you for inviting me into your home there, Les.
You're very welcome.
And could you tell me, before we go into the stories, could you tell me a little bit about how your sensitivity started towards ghosts and spirits?
Yeah, I think as a child I didn't have anything really, but there's a saying that says these things skip a generation. My mum had nothing, but my grandmother, she was different. She claimed to see and hear all sorts of different things, and I firmly believe that it is, if you like, within me. And yeah, it's hard to say whether one particular day anything started, but it seems to have come upon me gradually, and I've just had to sort of embrace it really as the years have gone by. But there is no particular day that I can say that's when it started.
Drifted into it.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Your first recollections of things happening to you, are they things that really have stuck in your mind, or are they just passing things?
I think the first things, to be honest, are things that have drifted, to be honest, because as a child or a teenager you don't always perhaps nail it to the mast as much as you could or should have done, but only when you get that much older you start to realise, well, that was a bit odd, that doesn't really make sense, and what on earth was that?
Yeah.
So honestly, I'm 62 now, so these things have multiplied as the years have gone by. Simple as that, really.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, if you've read Ghost Detective 7, you will know some stories, but if you haven't, we're going to go into a couple of stories, well, three stories in fact, that Les told to me for the book. But like I say, if you haven't read them, we're going to listen to them now. And Les, could you tell us the story of the hotel?
Yes, this would be the, excuse my Welsh, the Llansanfraid Court Hotel was its full name. Yes. Yeah, you want the whole story?
If yes. You could. I mean, if there's something you would rather leave out, then
no. There's nothing,
okay.
Nothing strange in there.
Okay.
Yeah, this was. I got married for the first time in 1986, and then I'm pretty sure it was a year later, and I just thought, you know, the old romantic. I thought, let's do something nice, first anniversary, etc. So I'm going to recite it literally from memory, and this is, I think, how it went. I don't know how I came across this place. Maybe I saw it because this was the days before phones and Facebook and what have you. But anyway, I came across this place called the Llansanfraid Court Hotel, and it looked nice, and I thought, yeah, that's okay. So as you do, I gave them a ring. I'm 4-6 weeks before the event, something like that. Everything was so normal, you couldn't believe it. Lovely lady on the phone. Yes, hello Mr. Dodd, how long are you coming for? You know, looking forward to seeing you. Booking, job done. Fantastic. Now, again, when you think back, they didn't send a booking of confirmation.
Right.
There was no follow-up phone call to just go, just checking, you're coming in a couple of days. Nothing like that, but I didn't consider it. We knew where we were going. I said to my wife at the time, we're going to Wales, because obviously that's where it was. But, excuse me, we set off. I have looked briefly, and we would have taken, I think, the M4 to get into Wales. and then there was another fairly decent road up. But there came a point where we had to leave these main roads. So you can imagine here's where we are, but this place is over here. So you've got all these B roads and jiggery pokery to get to it. And this sounds so melodramatic, but it's true. The minute we left the main road and started onto this B road, the clouds came in, it darkened, and we both went, ooh, like that. It was just odd, but we didn't overthink it. So we kept going, we kept going, we kept going. And to be fair, without too much difficulty, we found a sign to the place. And within a few yards, sure enough, we turned left. The thing I remember most of all was the cattle grid. So it wasn't like we weren't there. There was a cattle grid, chung 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 chung, over the cattle grid. Quite a decent drive down to this place. But as we approached it, from a distance, you just go, okay, there it is. But as we got closer, we sort of again looked at each other and said, there's something not quite right here. It was ramshackle. It was in a mess. And it was, I couldn't say at the time there'd been a fire, but we learnt later there had. But I'm moving on. We just found this place and there was nobody around. We stopped, obviously. We got out, we stood there looking like this. No one came out to us. Nothing. It was really, really silent. Except piano music. And again, this is one of the things I remember. I can't tell you what it was, but it was someone or a piano being played. And if we use this, so there's the door and the piano was in the top left-hand corner of this building. And I was not exactly brave, but I thought, well, okay, it seems weird, but let's go in. So I went in this door and I didn't go far because it was just a mess inside, like a building would be that had had a tragedy or a fire. But I could still hear this music clear as day. And it was only then that I thought, I don't like this. This just ain't right, I'm sorry. Came out, said to the missus, and she went, I went, no, just don't ask. We just got in the car, looked over, and I think we took, I haven't got it now, but I think we took a photo, because there was something in me that went, what if we take a photo, and when it's developed, there's nothing there?
Yeah.
What if?
Yeah.
Anyway, we left, in a way, quite happy, and we drove further on, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the village, but we came to a village, and there was a pub that had signs saying accommodation. So we went, look, it's one night, this will do. So we went in, do you have a room? Yes. You know, food and drink, lovely, this will sort us out. The place was busy, but not crazy. So we found a table, like it would be this table, and there was an old fella sitting there, like it might be you, and we went, do you mind if... No.
Yeah,
Sorry, he's not old, but like it would be you sitting there, and we went, I don't suppose we could sit. He certainly said, no problem, so we did. And it turned out he knew the area, and he said, what are you two just passing through, or I haven't seen you in here before? And we went, no, we were trying to stay at the Llansanfraid Court Hotel, but... And before I'd finished the sentence, he went, you what? And I said, we tried to stay at this hotel. And he went, well, that's ridiculous. It's impossible. I said, sorry, why is it ridiculous and or impossible? He said, because that place burnt down years ago. And I said, well, from what I've just seen, yeah, I can see your point there. But how is it that 6 weeks ago I rung up and made an appointment, which was accepted, and, they were looking forward to seeing us. Did this fire happen in the last month? No, years ago, he said. So we looked at each other and just said, well, how is this even possible? Because if you think at some point somebody would have written to us and said, you didn't, say we'd got the wrong place. Somebody would have phoned us. Somebody would have written to us, you didn't turn up, etc. None of that happened. So we just, yeah, it was a mystery. We scratched our heads for some considerable time, and we just had to get on with the rest of our break, our holiday, and just put it down to, and at the time I wasn't considering it to be a time slip, but years later I went back with someone else, and there it was, in its glory, if you like. And I went in, they thought, I presumed that we wanted to stay, and I said, "Oh, actually, I've got a little story for you." Condensed it considerably, and they were quite, well, not over surprised, which surprised me, but interested. So I told her about the piano and what have you, and she said, "Oh, okay, come in." So we both went in, and she took us through, and then we got to a certain point, and she went, "I don't suppose it'd be in that area there, would it?" And I said, "Actually, that's exactly where it was." And there was a big beam, and I remember this huge oak beam, I assume, hang in the room. And apparently somebody once, I don't know when, had hung themselves from this beam.
Right.
And there was a fire there, but not in the time period that it should have happened, if you see what I mean. And she partly understood what I was talking about, but as I say, the time aspect didn't make any sense.
Yes.
And that is why I have ultimately put this down to a time slip. I think that when we came off that road, we entered something, some sort of parallel time thing, where all the faculties outside changed, and suddenly we've gone back in time, and this place doesn't exist as it should do. And only when we left it did things revert to normal. But who was this guy in the pub?
Yeah.
How did he happen,
Yes, exactly.
if you like, to be there? Was that a massive coincidence that we bumped into him, that he had all the so-called answers but couldn't actually answer any of our questions?
Yes.
The whole thing, very, very odd. And to go back and to find that they didn't think I was a nutter, that actually they put some credence to it.
Yes, yes.
I find that, and I've never got to the bottom of it, and to tell you the truth, I don't think I ever will. But I'm convinced something strange happened that day.
Yeah, because it's really strange when you say about the time difference between your first and your second visit. Now, when I went in, you asked me to go into a little bit of history of it.
Yes.
When I went into the history of it, the time that you rang up, that was an operating hotel as you saw it on your second visit.
Correct.
And I believe that the main fire, the second fire they were talking to you about, was a kitchen fire, only a small affair.
Right.
But the main fire happened around 1912.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where it just deepens it.
It does, certainly.
And like you say, who was the chap you were talking to in the pub?
Precisely.
Now that is brilliant.
I wish I could be more specific, but I guess that's how these things work.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what we saw, what we heard, what we found.
Yeah.
Would I go back there again? Yeah, in theory I would. But, you know...
But it will probably never happen in that location to you again.
Never. I'm quite convinced of it.
No.
How and why it did, we can't answer questions like that because I'm not the only person it's happened to.
Yeah.
There's a famous one in Paris of the two ladies at the... I don't know where they were, but anyway, it's a very famous story of two ladies who just... things weren't right and buildings weren't there. And this is not dissimilar. And it's something I'll never, ever forget or put to one side and just go, you were dreaming. No, I wasn't. It was very real. We know what happened.
Yeah, thank you for that one. Thank you for that one. Now, it's interesting what Les was saying there about things that happen to people. I mean, a lot of people say that ghosts and spirits don't exist, time slip doesn't exist, but when you hear of cases like this, you can't deny that something happened. You know, he actually went over a cattle grid. He felt it in the car, right? That's a physical thing. He went up to the hotel, a physical thing. It was there. But, like I said, when going through the research, the first time he phoned up, that was a proper modern working hotel. Interesting. Now, Les, You've told me some really interesting stories in the past, and I know you've got lots and lots of stories because there's a lot that happens to this chap.
Yes,
I'll tell you.
there is.
Could you tell me the story that you told me for book 7? It's in book 7.
Book 7.
Yeah. Could you tell me the story of the hitchhiker?
Oh dear. That's, sorry if I go, but it's quite emotional. Oh, my wife and I were fine. We were getting on terrific, but I don't know, maybe we just needed a break now and again. And I love Scotland, full stop. And I'd gone to, well, actually, I'd hired a car. And I think that's right, I'd gone to Ayr, obviously on the west coast of Scotland, hired a car. And I like to get off the main roads. I don't really care for them. But anyway, I was just driving around. I think it was more Dumfries and Galloway area, but I can't be exactly sure. But I know it was a lovely, quiet road, quite wooded, I remember that. And before long, I saw a guy ahead of me. He was older than I think you suggested in the book, but that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And he was thumbing a lift. And I thought, oh, you know, maybe it's not the wisest thing these days to pick up people, but I didn't consider that at the time. So I stopped the car and wound the window down. And I said, you know, well, are you going somewhere far? And he said, well, I've got a way to go. I said, well, no worries, mate. Jump in the old car. So I did. And he told me where he wanted to go, but it didn't mean anything to me. And I understand it was a fair way away. And he just, don't worry, I'll, you know, give you directions, left, right, whatever. So, okay. Now, we're not going to sit there in silence, so I just thought I'd ask a bit more about him. And it turned out that it wasn't the first time he'd met, well, we'll come back to that, but it wasn't the first time apparently he'd made this journey. From what I remember, he lived in somewhere, actually claimed to live in somewhere like Southend. So he'd get a bus because he didn't drive, he'd get a bus to London, and then he would make this incredibly long journey from London to the area, let's say Ayr or Dump. I know. Yeah. But of course the bus wasn't all the way through like your trains might be. There would be stop and he'd have to change. And occasionally he would spend hours and hours and hours lying in abandoned bus shelters, freezing cold and waiting for a bus in hours to come, because obviously money was an issue, in an attempt to go and visit his brother, who he told me was really, really ill. And I was just sort of slightly overwhelmed by this whole story. Oh, what a magnificent thing to do, because he's no chicken. He was probably my age then, but there we are. And I was, you know, filling up a little bit. But anyway, I thought, well, good on you, mate, fair enough. Yeah, his brother was really ill and he'd come all this way, and we got nearer. Yeah, okay, up here, right. And eventually he said, okay, if you can, it was just a little road like this, and I could see not a kirk, that's a church, but a small house. Yes. When I say in the distance, probably further than that house, but away. And we pulled up and I said, oh, shall I turn left here? No, just let me out. I said, well, I've brought you this far, it's no trouble. But he was quite, not rude, but quite insistent. Here is enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck to you, mate, and I hope your brother is okay. So he got out the car. And all this time, as real as you can imagine, speech, closing of doors, things like that. So I now have this slight predicament where I've got to do a bit of jiggery with the car. So left, 3-5 point turn, whatever. So I turn around and I'm like, oh, and he's not there. So I'm sort of looking around the car thinking he stood back to let me through. No. And I can see how far it is, and I can see he's not a runner. It's not possible for me to have turned the car around and for him to have got to where he's going.
Right.
I wasn't comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, I can't leave this. So I made that what is now a right turn, drove down this gravel path, I reached this house. So it took me a couple of minutes in the car, so if you think about it. Knock, knock, knock on the door. Old fella. I won't say he looked like him, but he was of similar age, came to the door. And I explained what I've just told you. And I said, is he here? I just want to check that he's all right. And he said, no, there's nobody here, only me. I said, so who is this? Apparently it was your brother. He said, yeah, I did have a brother, but he died 3 years ago. And I went, I said, how many, hang on, you've got two brothers. He went, no, I've got one brother. He died 3 years ago. I said, well, who was in my car then? He said, I don't know, mate.
Wow.
And I don't know either, because he was in my car, I'm telling you that, and then he got out, and you lose focus for a few seconds, and you turn around and he's gone. Now, was he making the gesture by hitchhiking or whatever he had to do, but actually when it came to the point of being there, his spirit turned him away again?
Yeah.
I haven't got all those answers, but I know I picked this guy up and I know where I took him, and I know he disappeared almost in front of me.
That's absolutely amazing. Now, to the audience that are watching and the listeners as well, I often say about ghosts and spirits being completely different things, and they are.
Yeah.
And what Les has just described is a spirit, because spirits affect the physical. Now, when a car door opens and closes, it's a physical thing. You know, there's no getting round it. That wasn't a ghost, that was a spirit. And again, people say it doesn't happen. It does. It happens to people like Les, and thousands of other people have these experiences as well. Les, now you've got another story. This is not in the book. Now, you've got a story, Missing Angel.
Oh yes, that's my title for it.
Yes.
Again, I'm trying to think now. This would be definitely pre-COVID, so we're talking. It could even be as far back as 2018. I would probably suggest it might be 19, but I guess that doesn't really matter. I set off with no particular agenda. This is so local. I went to Wellingborough, of which you know very well.
Yes.
It was a grotty day. It was wet, and it was, and I was done up, and I was just going to do a bit of sort of light shopping. I felt quite happy with myself. But by pure chance, I was coming down the high street, and there's many shops, and in shop doorways, etc. There was a poor old fellow, and I think he wasn't old, but he'd got a sign up saying something to do with the army. And there he is, huddled in cardboard and whatever. And I don't know, something just, I thought, I've got to do something for this fella. So I went over to him, instead of lobbing a pound at him, I said, what would be the best thing that could happen to you right now? And he went, hot chocolate, mate. Which wasn't the answer I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I went, leave that with me. So sure enough, is it Starbucks on the corner? And I thought, no, I tell you a lie, on the left where McDonald's used to be.
Oh right, yeah.
Cafe Nero, I think it's called.
I don't know that
But
one.
anyway, I thought, so I went in there, asked for a large hot chocolate, and I think I bought him a couple of biscuit packs or whatever. Bought them, took them over to him. I thought, well, it's not going to change his life, but it might just warm him up a bit, and he was thrilled to bits. So that was fair enough. So I've done that. I then walk across the square in Wellingborough to near the entrance to the Swans Gate, and blow me, there's a woman, Chinesey woman, sitting there in a similar predicament.
Oh right.
And I thought, oh, this is my day, isn't it? And I thought, well, I said, so what's the best thing that you could what that I could do for you right now? Believe it or not, she went, hot chocolate, which you couldn't make that up.
Is
for
it a
start.
thing in Wellingborough?
It must be. I had to smile to myself, and I went, okay. I was just feeling in that sort of mood. And this time I went to Starbucks because it was nearer. Yeah. Got the chocolate, bought her a cake or whatever it was, da-de-da. Came back to her, and she was thrilled to bits. And apparently, she'd been selling the big issue. And she couldn't do it in Leicester because she would get attacked, and you know it was horrible. And she was making this journey by train and one thing and another. And I gave her 20 quid because the train journey was something like that as well. So I tried to make her day a little bit, shall we say. So I finished my shopping, as it were. Then if you can picture this, I'd gone through the Swan's Gate to there's some doors that open, then you've got a car park is above or on that level, and you've got the lifts.
Yeah.
So I've pressed the button for the lift. The doors that are behind me to the street, one opened, and you know, I was half looking at the lift door, which hadn't come down yet, and half glanced, and I can picture her now, 55 years old, light blue coat, and it was damp, yeah, because it was raining. But this is, and for a second it didn't click, and then it did. She approached me like as I'm close to you now, and she went, "Thank you for what you did today." And you know what it's like, we passed like that for a second, and my brain went, "Whoa, hang on a minute." And I turned round to her to say, "Well, that's very kind of you, but how do you know what I did today?"
Yeah.
And you know what I'm going to say next? She was not
She
there.
wasn't there. Yeah.
Now, she hasn't gone to the right of me because there's no exit. The first thing I did was rip open the doors that lead to the ground floor, I think, of the car park. These are seconds, these are not minutes. Looked in the first few cars, nothing, no one about anywhere. She is not there.
Brilliant.
So how did she know what I did?
Yeah.
This is why I've called her an angel, because they don't appear in big wings and whatever. They can be anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I honestly think she was an angel that was thanking me for my good deed, if you like, but then chose not to hang around.
Mm.
And I wasn't scared by it, but it did make me feel, ooh. But that was, wow, that was quite something.
Yeah.
And that's why I've called it the missing angel.
Yeah. You are a magnet for things. You are definitely a magnet for things to happen. I mean, I think if anybody wanted to know about the paranormal, just stick around till 6 months.
Just come to me.
Just come over and have a chat. But the thing is, I love the stories that you tell. But they're not just stories. They're things that happen to your life.
Absolutely, yeah. There's the experience is a word I prefer more than story.
Yes.
And I mean, I can make this really quick.
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
if you want to get even closer, we're talking next door. When I moved in here 2010, some months afterwards, I would be lying in bed and I've just got settled, and I would hear that.
Right.
It was coming from, you know, the bedroom next door. That wasn't a thing. But every night. And I started to get on my nerves after a while, and he's a lovely fella next door. We don't see each other often.
Yeah.
But eventually I went to him and I said, "You all right, Rob?" Yeah. I said, "You did say if ever there was something I wanted to talk about." He said, "Yeah, go ahead. What is it?" I said, "You know when you're in bed having a drink at night," and I said, "I was wondering if there was any way you could put your cup down a bit quieter or put something soft on it." He went, "Tiny problem." I went, "What's that?" He said, "I don't sleep in that bedroom. He sleeps in the front bedroom here."
Oh, right.
But he said, "I'll tell you what," he said, "my mum used to sleep in that bedroom, and she was an alcoholic, and she died in that bedroom."
So it figures.
Yeah, and then that next night I was very polite, and I sat there in bed and I said a little, wasn't a prayer, it was just a little thing, and I said, "I don't know your name," I said, "but can I ask you to not make the noise that you're making, because frankly it's making me jump."
Yeah.
And it never, ever happened again.
Yeah.
Never.
This is something I've said to people. If you've got something happening in your home, if you ask them to stop, 9 times out of 10 they will stop.
Yes, yeah.
But people don't think about doing that. So.
And you be polite like you would to a person, you know,
Exactly,
just instead of going, "Oh, why are you making all this?" Just say it nicely. And she probably went, "Oh, didn't realise I was doing it."
Yeah, yeah.
excuse me, and it's never ever happened again. But I just thought I'd throw that in because it is literally next door.
Yeah.
Literally.
Thank you.
Wow.
I think that what you've just heard will give you food for thought, and I hope you've enjoyed today's show. There will be many more shows to come, but thank you, Les, for those stories, and you've been brilliant as ever.
You're very welcome.
And till next time, thank you very much. Goodbye.